Hi, I'm Sarah. Welcome back to my channel where I talk about my journey to sustainable health and meaningful success. If you're coming back and you've already subscribed, welcome back. Y'all are my people and I love you so much. And if you're new, I hope you'll consider subscribing by the end of this video. We're almost at 400, which is incredible, so thank you. And yeah, I think today is just gonna be another rant. My last video about like my health journey was my July health update, and we had a lot of spiritual reflections, and that is still the season that I'm in of just seriously deeply reflecting things that and basically reframing different beliefs that I've had about myself that are no longer true and have probably never been true, but for some reason I held on to those beliefs for a really long time. So just within this past week, if you follow me on Instagram, you've already seen a couple of my posts. One of them was about not going to the vending machine that day because I was like, sometimes vending machine food is like, it's worth it and it's totally fine. But today is not one of those days, and I've been feeling fat, and I just need to change my perspective and look at the positive and see that I'm wearing leggings that are a size lower and a size smaller, and just focus on something different that didn't make me feel defeated. And then later that week, I was wearing a shirt that was off the shoulder, and someone reported it, not to my boss, but to my boss's boss, reported it to the general manager of the plant. And I suspect that it was because that morning when I walked in, their boyfriend looked up and said hi to me, and that person got really offended and reported that my shirt was too revealing. And that, for me, what really upsets me about that is the idea that I was dressed inappropriately for work, or that I was basically I kind of felt slut shamed. I don't know if that if people can relate to that, but I felt like that. I all of a sudden I felt really uncomfortable, and I'm like, I don't think my shirt is really that revealing. My boss didn't think my shirt was that revealing. In fact, I had actually asked permission specifically for that shirt and others like it. I said at the beginning of the summer, I was like, I have a lot of shirts that are off the shoulder. Is that going to be a problem with the dress code? And she's like, no. So I don't know. So I've been reflecting on a lot of different things within this past week. So this is what I am just coming to find. And that is that the choices that we make in our food and the choices that we make sexually do not define who we are. That is how I feel. I've talked a lot about being the fat girl. I did the skinny on being fat as a video sometime last fall, and talked about how I've identified myself as being fat, or the fact that my body is fat, but I don't necessarily take that as a hit on my personality. I think it's ridiculous, the people who think that being fat is a personality, just like the same as being vegan is a personality, or having same-sex attraction is a personality. I think it's just ridiculous. I don't think that that's something that identifies you or defines you. And the people who let those things but define them, it's just, I think that they're selling themselves short. So for me to break the habit of going to the vending machine, or break that mental cycle of, every morning going into work thinking, oh, I went to the vending machine yesterday and I'll probably do it again today, and I'm not gonna be making progress on my weight or whatever, and just end up beating myself up for decisions that I had made, and the calories had already been burned. It's already been done and gone. I've already, flushed out the remains of of that snack. It's literally physically not with me anymore, but mentally it's still with me. And the reason why I'm tying this in with sexuality or sex and general whateverness is the fact that this has been a point of reflection for the last couple weeks. August 23rd is the 1-year anniversary of my miscarriage. And I miscarried a child that I had gotten pregnant with out of wedlock. And to a lot of people, that's not a big deal. But in the kind of culture that I grew up in, I grew up really Christian conservative, homeschool. Getting pregnant with someone who was not my husband was probably the worst thing that I could have imagined myself doing. And so a year ago that came true, and that was the reality. I'm like, okay, I've reached this level. And to be honest, I didn't feel any particular condemnation from that personally. I think it's just because at that point it was like, what else is new? I've been feeling condemned for so many other things, so let's just add that on top of it. But yeah, so I guess just coming to terms with the fact that it's like, oh no, I'm not the pristine, innocent girl that I was raised to be. But I also don't take that as a hit on my identity. And I was watching this YouTube video a couple days ago, or maybe a couple weeks ago. I don't know. Time, what is it? But I was watching someone who's not a Christian react to a Christian book on purity. I think the book that they were reacting to is called Technical Virgin. I haven't read the book, but I've read similar books to it, and I was raised with a similar concept of purity. And basically, I was raised with the belief that, if you're gonna kiss a boy and then you're gonna kiss another boy, every time you kiss someone, every time you're giving part of yourself away, to the point where when you get married, you'll have hardly anything left to give to your husband. Which, saying it out loud now, just sounds so ridiculous, but that's how I grew up. That was a lot of the media that I was raised on, was, people talking about how, if you are not a virgin when you're married, you don't have your whole self to give to your husband. And if you've slept with a ton of people, like, you're basically just giving your husband the leftovers. Which, maybe I don't disagree with. I mean, fine. So you're not this untouched person, but that doesn't mean that you're not a whole person, and that doesn't mean that you don't have your entire self to give to another person, to commit your life to, and to commit yourself to. I really am actually deeply hurt by the fact that there are a lot of very conservative Christians who think that the power of Christ's atonement and Christ's blood doesn't cover the sexual sins of women who choose to give themselves away to their husband. And oddly enough, I don't really recall that ever being said to the young men in that same social group. But that's neither here nor there. But I've been reflecting on this, and the reason why I'm talking about this in a channel that's about health and success is because I think spiritual health is a big part of who we are and how we define ourselves. So we're covering my journey on this. And this morning I was reading, I'm not going to make it out to seem like I read my Bible every morning. I don't, but I did read the Bible this morning. I actually had to take my arm and swipe the dust off of my Bible. So let's not get any, impressions on my super spirituality. But I was reading John. Ugh, car, don't interrupt me. Anyway, I was reading John chapter 8, and I'll include the scripture that I'm talking about in the description below. But it was the story of the woman who was brought before Jesus, who had committed adultery, and she was caught in the act of adultery. And in that time, it was customary that women who were caught in adultery would be stoned to death. Of course, they didn't bring the man to Jesus. It was the woman who was to be held accountable to this sin. So they brought her before Jesus and said, "What do you think we should do with her? You know, the law says that we should stone her, but what do you think?" And Jesus looked at them and said, "Well, whoever is without sin, you cast the first stone." Like, whoever has never sinned before, be my guest, be the person to throw the first stone. And one by one, they walked away until it was just Jesus and the woman. And he asked the woman, "Well, who stands here condemning you?" And she's like, "Nobody." And Jesus said, "Well, then neither do I. I don't condemn you either. Just go and live your life of sin." And that's it. And that was it. And I mean, I think that's why I follow Jesus. I don't follow Jesus because I want to be like a lot of the Christians of today, especially like Western modern Christians. I think that we need to be reawakened to the truth of Christ and the gospel, the good news. Because to a lot of people, Jesus is not good news, but to me, he is. He really is. And so I read that scripture, and I've been just reflecting on the fact that for so long, I feel like I've defined myself by decisions that I've made in the past, or not even decisions that I've made or actions that I've taken, but just things that I like or things that I'm attracted to. You know, I've had a couple crushes on girls. I'm not mainly attracted to girls, but you know, I have had same-sex attraction in the past. That doesn't become part of my identity. It doesn't become part of my personality. And that's why I don't necessarily celebrate Pride, because it's not something that I'm particularly proud of. I haven't really worked out in my own faith, like, what I believe about homosexuality moral wise, but all I know is that like, that doesn't define me, and that doesn't give me more or less value because of something that I was inclined to at one time, or the fact that, you know, I have a sweet tooth, or that I'm 300 pounds. You know, I think that there needs to be a distinction between karma, or reaping what you sow, because that's like, I believe in karma. Karma is basically the principle of whatever patterns you develop in your life, you are going to reap the consequences of that. And the Christian concept of that is whatever you sow, whatever you plant in the ground, that's what is going to grow. That's what you're going to reap. And so it's like, okay, so I had terrible food habits in the past, and so those habits built a body that was 350 pounds. And that was my karma. You know, that was what I was reaping, what I was sowing. But that didn't have any bearing on who I was as a person. And it's the same thing with sex. You know, you will reap what you sow if you sleep with someone with a venereal disease. You will reap with what you sow if you don't take proper precautions and you get pregnant when you're not ready to be pregnant. That's a natural thing. Or that's like the obvious conclusion of those decisions. But I'm so done with taking that on as part of my personality or my identity, or defining how worthy I am, defining my value. It's no longer a thing. So yeah, I guess in terms of vending machines and shoulderless shirts, I'm no longer allowed to wear shoulderless shirts at work because one person got offended by it. And vending machines are still not the devil. They're just something that I don't want to make a habit of every day, because I don't want to reap the vending machine karma. But it's really that simple. It doesn't have to get deeper than that. And in terms of like decisions that I've made in the past or things that I've felt really condemned over from a Christian point of view, I'm just taking I'm taking Jesus at his word, and I'm leaving my life of sin. It's just, if I've encountered in scripture that Jesus said, don't do that, that's not good for you. Don't do that. That really is against my desires for you. I want more for you than that decision would bring. Then I'm just not going to do it. And it doesn't have to be that deep. In terms of identity and value, I know who I am. I know whose I am. I know who I belong to. I follow Christ. And so Christ defines me, and not those super religious people who claim to follow Christ. Those people don't define me. And I think that distinction really has to be made. But man, that's been on my mind so much, just because I think I'm at a point where it's like I have to decide what labels I receive from people, who can determine things about me, who can actually say things about my worth and my identity, and who has that kind of authority to speak that over me. And what is just so beautiful, to be honest, is the fact that, I got pregnant last year. It was not in a circumstance that I would have wanted to be pregnant. It wasn't with a person that I wanted to have a child with. I was not in a good place last year. I felt condemned for a lot of decisions that I had made, not just getting pregnant with someone who I wasn't married to, but the moment that I knew that I was pregnant, I decided that child was loved and wanted. And even after I had miscarried, I named the child and decided that it was a girl, because it was too early to tell what it was. But I named my daughter Grace Elena Hope. Elena means light. So Grace, light, and hope. And I spoke over my own child something that I wasn't willing to speak over myself at the time. But I was never going to speak pain or hurt or low value over my own daughter. And I'm no longer going to speak that over myself. I'm no longer going to, if I would name my own daughter something that is grace and light and hope, then I will not speak less than that over myself either. I don't know if I'm explaining that right, but if you wouldn't say something to your own kid, if you wouldn't say something to someone that you love, then why would you say it to yourself? And if you wouldn't identify or call someone a name who you loved, and you wouldn't attack that person with negative thoughts or condemning words, then just don't do it to yourself, because you're worth more than that. You're you were created in love. Even if you weren't received into the world in love, you were still created in love. And that's what we're called to walk in love. That's all we're called to do in this earth. If you're not, super great at anything, and you don't have any people that you can say love you in life, you're still created in that identity. You're still created in love, and you're still called to be that to other people. So I'll get off my soapbox now. I'm not trying to be preachy or anything. I'm not a pastor. I'm not any sort of religiously trained person. I'm just someone who has allowed myself to be made to feel so much less than and so unvalued by other people, and I'm done with it. I'm over it. It's no longer a thing. So anyway, I love you so much. Thank you for tuning in. I will see you on Wednesday for more anti-MLM part 3. Finally, we're gonna finish it. And yeah. Okay, bye.